Hello and welcome. 5 states in Nigeria currently participating in ongoing World Health Organization solidarity trial for COVID-19 vaccine, as Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 discloses over 50% of infections are from 9 densely populated local government areas. Controversy over Benin State COVID-19 index case, Lisa Idoku, she continues as her lawyer threatens to sue federal government over her alleged detention. Lagos State gets 1 more facility to treat COVID-19 patients. It's a donation from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, hands over Dezani Alison Madwekwe's forfeited property to the state government. And Chief Justice of Nigeria calls for speedy trial of pending cases and decongestion of prisons to stop COVID-19 spread. And COVID-19 cases in the United States rise above 1.4 million, according to Johns Hopkins University. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from Abuja, the FCT, and later on news from our studios in London.
On business news, more than 25 of the world's foremost private creditors come together to negotiate debt relief for African nations.
On sports news, tennis governing bodies ATP and WTA extend suspension of the sport till July the 31st due to the coronavirus pandemic.
And from Abuja, Oyo State House of Assembly begins investigation into 4.3 billion naira kept in secret bank account linked to the state government for over 10 years.
Five states in Nigeria are participating in the ongoing solidarity trial for a treatment for COVID-19 sponsored by the World Health Organization. And that's according to the chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and secretary to the government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa. The WHO project has over 100 countries that have pledged to participate in the trial of any treatment and vaccine for COVID-19. The Presidential Task Force also notes that out of over 5,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the country, 51% are from 9 local governments that are densely populated. Meanwhile, the Minister of Foreign Affairs has been explaining why Nigerians who might have been stranded in Thailand may have to prepare to bear much of the financial cost of their evacuation to Nigeria. Mr. Jeffrey Onyama was shedding light on a letter from the Embassy of Nigeria in Thailand to prospective evacuees at the briefing of the Presidential Task Force in Abuja today. The letter states that the evacuees are expected to pay a total of 297,600 naira for their accommodation and feeding in hotels while in isolation, before departure and on arrival in Nigeria. According to the letter, the rates were negotiated in Nigeria, while the embassy is under instructions not to airlift anyone who fails to pay the stated fee.
This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, something that the government is happy to do. As I've mentioned time and time again, if the resources were there, we would evacuate everybody. And if our medical infrastructure was solid and our caseload was much lower, we could look at other ways of accommodating, revisit our protocol. But the way things are at the moment, the fragility of our health infrastructure, the trajectory of the increasing numbers of positive tests being what they are, we have to take the greatest care with regards to the protocol we adopt with people coming home. So it's been decided after long discussion.
We'll have more of what transpired at today's briefing of the PTF a bit later on in the bulletin. But after almost 2 months at an isolation center in Abuja, the COVID-19 index case in Benin State, Mrs. Susan Idoku, has threatened to take legal action against the Nigeria Center for Disease Control if she's not released within the next 7 days. Addressing a news conference in Abuja, her lawyer, Stephen Eke, says his client has lost confidence in the ability of the NCDC to carry out tests. He's asking the federal government to ensure that an independent test is conducted by the World Health Organization under the supervision of the British High Commission and Mrs. Idoku's personal physician. The lawyer says the continued detention of Mrs. Idoku in the name of isolation is a clear violation of her fundamental human rights.
She now says, okay, fine, for 53 days. They said the gestation period of this thing is 3 to 14 days. I have far exceeded 14 days. And I'm not coming and I'm now taking a treatment. So what I want for us to settle this thing is get an independent test for me. And then whatever the result says, I will abide by it. And the federal government says no. So if they continue to insist that they will not run an independent test for her, and they want to continue to detain her, then we'll go to court and enforce her fundamental right. She has the right to freedom of movement. She has the right to her personal liberty. And that is guaranteed by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And every other authority and person is subject to that Constitution. And so if they want to continue detaining her, we will enforce her right. We have written to NCDC, and we have told them that they either release her unconditionally because she's not positive and she's not showing any symptoms of COVID-19 virus, or you update what she has said and run the test independently so that she will be satisfied. She is this person, subject matter of this particular thing. Let her be satisfied.
It's been a running battle between Mrs. Idoku and health authorities after she was declared the COVID-19 index case in Benin State. Mrs. Idoku had arrived in Benue on March the 23rd after she flew into the country via Kenya before checking into a hospital in the state capital when she felt unwell. But the controversy began after she posted a video online accusing the state government of ill treatment and disagreeing with conditions at the isolation center.
On Saturday, March 28, 2020, Governor Samuel Ortom, in company of the Benue State Action Committee on COVID-19, addressed journalists in Makurdi, confirming the first case of coronavirus in the state. Governor Ortom identified her as Susan Okwe.
We have confirmed a case of coronavirus being positive on one of our sisters.
The State Action Committee, headed by Mr. Benson Abunu, claimed that it took them 7 hours of negotiations with Susan Idoku before she agreed to be moved to the State Isolation Center. While at the facility, she released her first video, which went viral on social media, alleging inhuman treatment by the medical team.
Threw this on my table that I should come and pick it and wear it. I asked him for an ID. He said he's a doctor that works with the government. I said he must identify himself to be able to treat me.
Social media platforms went abuzz with the controversy that the patient was upset about the government throwing her under the bus. After 5 days in isolation and upon her request, she was moved to Abuja on Thursday, April the 2nd. On the 7th day of her isolation in Abuja, Mrs. Idoku again made another video asking the federal government to release her.
I am pleading with everybody to please tell Nigerian government to let me go.
Responding to questions at the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 briefing on May the 7th, the Minister of Health says another test will be conducted on her after the second test came back positive.
She has agreed to be tested, and then she also, as far as her before, gave conditions for being tested that she must be giving all her results, which is okay.
The narrative soon changed on May the 12th.
When NCDC got there, she told them that she wanted the test to be taken by World Health Organization, and then that the test should not be done in Nigeria, they should send it to UK.
Till date, Idoku has posted about 4 videos online claiming she has been incarcerated for nearly 2 months, despite allegations that she has refused to cooperate with the officials charged with managing her condition. While the controversy unfolds, she is threatening to take legal action against the authorities.
In spite of the threat of a lawsuit, the Benue COVID-19 index case Susan Idoku seems to have relented on her demand to be tested by the World Health Organization. At the Presidential Task Force briefing on COVID-19 in Abuja, the Minister of Health, Dr. Osage Hanire, confirmed that he had persuaded Mrs. Idoku to consent to being tested. He says her sample has been taken and the results will be made out in a few days.
We have been able to persuade the popularly known Benue lady to allow a test sample to be taken to our laboratory for testing. The result is being awaited any time now and will be given to her in person. Please note that while the patient may disclose their result by themselves, the Federal Ministry of Health cannot and will not do so, except it has the permission of the person concerned.
As countries contend with the reality of COVID-19, the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Muhammad, is asking all chief judges to take urgent measures towards the speedy trial of cases and decongestion of custodial centers in the country. In a statement released today, he says the move is in line with the United Nations' recent call on countries of the world to consciously reduce the population of inmates, since physical distancing and self-isolation under such conditions is practically impossible. Part of the statement reads, "From available records, the inmates' population at various custodial centers across the country presently stands around 74,127, out of which 52,226 are awaiting trial persons. Most of these custodial centers are presently housing inmates beyond their capacities." The statement further reads, "The chief judges are enjoined to consider conditional or unconditional release of awaiting trial persons who have spent 6 years or more in custody. ATPs who have no confirmed criminal cases against them, aged inmates, and the terminally ill may be discharged." He also asked the judges to ensure that they direct lower courts to comply with the requirements of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act in issuing remand warrants in criminal cases, especially in cases which are not within their jurisdiction. Meanwhile, the Kwara State governor has been explaining the recent viral video showing the mishandling of the evacuation of a distressed man in a COVID-19 task force ambulance. According to the governor, Abdulrahman Abdul Razak, the man was an evicted tenant who decided to sleep in his vehicle, prompting calls by his neighbors for evacuation. To avoid a repeat of the incident, Governor Abdul Razak says the state government is taking certain steps, including the retraining of health workers in the state. The governor, who witnessed the simulation exercise at the specialist hospital in Ilorin, offered assurances that the state is not dropping the ball in the fight against COVID-19.
All our teams must move together, and henceforth we'll put in a law in place in the state, or urge other states to do the same, where the ambulance driver must have the basic health certification. You just don't need a driver's license to drive an ambulance. So we're pushing that, we'll push that law into the assembly, that to drive an ambulance, you have to have the basic health certificate. With the incident that happened a few days ago, we said we should come down and see again, even though they trained yesterday, training today, that training is an ongoing exercise to make sure all the right protocols are being followed. NDDC was here to train with us, take us through the protocols, and we have always been confident that we have a good team in place here.
In part 2, after the break, more on the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, and nurses frown on rising cases of infection among health workers. That's in a moment. To join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. 5 states in Nigeria are currently participating in ongoing World Health Organization solidarity trial for COVID-19 vaccine, as Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 discloses over 50% of infections are from 9 densely populated local government areas. Controversy over Benin State COVID-19 index case, Lisa Idoku, continues as her lawyer threatens to sue federal government over her alleged detention. Lagos State gets one more facility to treat COVID-19 patients. It's a donation from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, hands over the Zani Alison Madueke's forfeited property to the state government. And Chief Justice of Nigeria calls for speedy trials of pending cases and decongestion of prisons to stop COVID-19 spread. And COVID-19 cases in the United States rise above 1.4 million, and that's according to the Johns Hopkins University. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or you can download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android, Fire TV, and Roku as well. Well, let's now bring you a bit more about what transpired at the Presidential Task Force briefing earlier today, specifically the trial for treatment of COVID-19 sponsored by the World Health Organization, as Nigeria is part of the countries participating in an ongoing solidarity trial.
Members of It is the last news conference by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 for the week. And as usual, the chairman of the PTF is leading the conversations for the day.
However, I welcome you.
He gives updates about Nigeria's participation in the WHO clinical trial for COVID-19 cure.
I'm pleased to inform you that 5 states in Nigeria are participating in the ongoing WHO coordinated solidarity trial. At the end of this, relevant health authorities will make statements on acceptable drugs for treating COVID-19.
There are currently over 5,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria. A high percentage of these cases are limited to a few local government areas.
Let me say that our preliminary analysis has narrowed down the over 51% of the total number of infected persons to 9 local governments across the country, and all of them are densely populated.
The PTF also speaks about the negative effect of stigmatization on the fight against COVID-19.
Since the outbreak and spread of COVID-19 in Nigeria, we have observed increasing levels of stigma associated with the disease, and this leads to a number of issues. In the first place, stigma is a major setback to the COVID-19 response.
Both the Minister of Health and that of Humanitarian Affairs also give further clarification on the situation in Kano State, as well as the ongoing school feeding program.
The situation in Kano has largely stabilized, as you heard from the chairman, thanks to the good relationship between the visiting federal task team and the Kano State Task Force on COVID-19. One manifestation of this being the high number of new cases recorded daily from the fact that all labs in Kano are now functioning and clearing the sample backlog with over 350 tests that can be done daily.
This program, as modified, is targeted at health of the households, guardians, and caregivers of these children, the primary school pupils 1 to 3. And also, we are not spending 679 million per day, as alluded to. That number is inaccurate. The take-home rations are worth 4,200 naira per household, and is planned as a monthly COVID-19 intervention for 3,131,971 households in the participating states of the Federation.
The first 2 weeks of the ease of lockdown gradually winds up, with much anticipations from citizens about the kind of advice the PTF will be giving to the president to shape his decision on the second phase, which begins next week.
While the PTF noted the spread of infections, the task force did not list the 9 densely populated local government areas where over 50% of COVID-19 infections are found, just to state that as well. Now, despite efforts at improving on its handling of COVID-19 patients, Kwara State's Government Security Network had to foil an escape attempt by some COVID-19 patients who sneaked into the state. A statement from a spokesman to the governor, Rafiu Ajakaye, explains that the escape plot was uncovered by an intelligence network, leading to the arrest and return of the patients who had already scaled the fence of an isolation center. According to the statement, the patients were among the imported cases who had intentionally violated the interstate lockdown and came into the state. While affirming that security has been beefed up at the isolation center, Mr. Ajakaye says there is no reason why anyone would want to escape and put their lives and the lives of others at risk. Over in Niger State, the state government has confirmed that it's at an advanced stage of establishing a molecular laboratory and a testing center in Minna. The state governor, Abdullahi Bello, said the laboratory and testing center will help to reduce the turnaround time in the release of COVID-19 results.
With the test center, it gives us a clearer picture of what our real situation is here in Niger. I still believe for us to get to a comfort zone until we start testing people in thousands and we get more negative results, then we begin to relax some of our orders. We are strengthening the surveillance system to detect any case of coronavirus disease COVID-19, including investigation and monitoring of any outbreak. The Public Health Emergency Operations Center is on active mode with enhanced surveillance in place.
The Oyo State Governor Dave Umahi has listed the total ban on religious gatherings in the state, and that's confirmed in a statement from the State Commissioner for Information, who says the governor's decision was based on a passionate appeal by the leadership of the Christian Association of Nigeria and some other religious bodies in the state. The governor warned that all churches should observe their worship services only on Sunday between the hours of 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., while Muslims should also worship on Friday between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. He insists that no religious worship centers should permit more than 500 worshippers and should observe a minimum of 2 meters physical distance from one another. Let's cross over to Abuja now. Here's Ibrahim Adra. Ibrahim?
Many thanks, Ijoma. Well, still on COVID-19 in the southeast, the Abia State government has commissioned a 100-bed isolation center at the Amachara Specialist Hospital, Umuahia South local government area. During the commissioning of the facility, Governor Okezie Ikpeazu commended CACOVID, the private sector coalition against COVID-19, for their support and donation of the facility. He also hinted that the state will soon take delivery of a molecular laboratory to join the league of those testing for coronavirus from their states.
Reserve, and we will put to use at the appropriate time all these pieces of equipment that has been brought to us. Luckily, these are timeless medical equipment that will go beyond the era of COVID-19. We have acquired this and we will not go back. From here, we will build on our medical infrastructure and ensure that, medically speaking, Abia will not be the same anymore. We should be able to take care of our people health-wise when it comes to the kind of things that bother us, and also be prepared for emergencies whenever they come.
Meanwhile, over 1,000 violators of the Nasarawa State COVID-19 containment restrictions have been arrested by the Nigeria police, with several vehicles also confiscated. The State Commissioner of Police, Bola Longe, disclosed this to journalists in Lafia, the state capital. Now, the leadership of the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives is not happy about the rising cases of health workers testing positive for COVID-19 across the country. At a news conference in Abuja, the president of the association, Mr. Abdurrafiu Adeniji, notes that over 200 nurses are currently in isolation, even as another 80 test positive for the virus. According to Mr. Adeniji, 5 nurses and midwives have also paid the supreme price on the line of duty, and he attributes the situation to the lack of adequate knowledge on how to use protective equipment.
There are evidence of lack of adequate awareness and knowledge of the nature and transmission of COVID-19 disease. There is equally lack of adequate knowledge on the use of PPE and sometimes infectious disease principle and protocol are being violated by some healthcare frontline professionals, are enormous and be unduly exposed to this virus with thousands on isolation. This further exposes frontline health worker professionals to infection, particularly COVID-19. Over 2,000 Nigerian healthcare professionals, especially nurses and doctors, have tested positive to COVID-19. The statistics as received through NAM COVID-19 Situation Report Room show that almost 1,000 nurses and midwives have been exposed to COVID-19 infection, out of which about 250 are currently in isolation, and about 85 out of about 600 that have been tested have tested positive. On the whole, about 6 nurses and midwives have lost their lives. The WHO prescription is 40 nurses per 100,000 population, but what we have in Nigeria is 5 to 6 nurses to 100,000 of population. Therefore, we cannot afford to lose part of this scarce human resources for health.
And when the news at 10 returns, we will bring you more updates on COVID-19. Plus, more than 25 of the world's foremost private creditors form group to negotiate debt relief for African nations. That's on Business News. Join us again. Now, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, is distributing food items in 38,000 households in Borno State. The agency targets internally displaced persons, host communities, and people living in liberated towns across the state. The food distribution is a monthly routine of NEMA, complementing other agencies operating in the state.
This is Mona Garage Camp, housing displaced persons from 8 local government areas in Borno State. It is more of a transit camp for the displaced in the central zone of the state, with a population of at least 30,000 people. While some of its inhabitants move to the capital city to rent homes, new arrivals are recorded almost on a weekly basis from nearby villages and detention facilities.
The new people we get are mostly those released from the military facility in Giwa Barracks, who opted to stay here because of the food supply. There are people who settled in nearby villages but also had to join us here because of food. We have included them. There are also those who fled and rented houses but can no longer afford to pay rent. They are now back to the camp.
The National Emergency Management Agency has identified residents of this camp as beneficiaries of its monthly food distribution, and the goal is to reach everyone.
Every month, the National Emergency Management Agency will normally distribute 38,000 households in Borno State. We have only 2 camps remain now, Custom and Medina 2 camps. Then we have host communities like Kusheri, Ahmed Grema, Pilimbol, New Tourism, and Salmanti and Wagami.
For convenience and accountability purposes, leaders of each group of 40 beneficiaries cart away their portions.
When they bring food to share, I come with my card indicating that I'm a leader. When we present the card, they release the food to our various groups. After that, we take the food home and share with our people. I have 27 women in my group.
Women and children still come to the distribution center to sift through the sand, hoping to get extra grain to supplement the portion allocated to them, knowing that it will be another month before the next round of distribution.
Well, I'll go right back to Ijoma in our Lagos studios for the rest of news at 10.
Thanks a lot, Ibrahim. The Oyo State government has discharged 11 COVID-19 patients after testing negative twice. This represents the highest number discharged at once since the pandemic broke out in the state. Addressing journalists at the Olodo Infectious Disease Center in Ibadan, the coordinator of the center, Professor Temitope Alunge, explained that the 11 patients, comprising 3 females and 8 males, were discharged, having spent over 2 weeks at the center. And with the pandemic hitting hard on the Nigerian economy, the National Agency for Food, Drug Administration and Control has introduced some palliatives meant to assist micro, small and medium enterprises to expedite the registration of their products. At the virtual launch of the palliatives in Lagos, the Vice President was in attendance via Zoom, and he said MSMEs can now process the registration of their products with NAFDAC from the comfort of their homes and at 80% discounted rate over a period of 6 months.
This is why the e-registration assistance for MSMEs through the Automated Product Administration and Monitoring System, NAPAMS, is so timely. Henceforth, MSMEs can now process the registration of their products with NAFDAC in the comfort of their homes or offices at an 80% discounted rate over a period of 6 months. NAFDAC has rolled out some other palliatives, including zero tariffs for the first 200 MSMEs to register on the e-platform and a waiver on administrative charges for overdue late renewal of expired licenses of MSMEs and their products for a period of 90 days. These are all indicators of the new spirit of NAFDAC and a foretaste of the support that MSMEs stand to enjoy, especially in these very difficult times. Indeed, the event today is aimed at assisting and addressing some of the challenges identified during those MSME clinics. As the President has repeatedly urged, we have no excuse not to be one of the most productive and prolific economies in the world. Our hope is to achieve this aim through the incredible numbers of MSMEs that we have. We certainly can achieve the aim of being the most productive, one of the most productive and the most prolific economies in the world, especially because of the sheer range of talent that we have in technology, in entertainment, in TV and film production, in manufacturing, in the agro-allied industry, and several ancillary services. This is our moment, and the government of Nigeria and its regulatory agencies are prepared to back MSMEs and to back businesses that are prepared for the innovative and interesting times that lie ahead of us.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has handed over a property forfeited by a former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Diezani Alison Madueke, to the Lagos State government for use as an isolation center for COVID-19 patients. The 6 flats were handed over to the federal government following an order of a federal high court in Lagos in 2017. The zonal head of the EFCC in Lagos, Mr. Mohammed Rabo, said the gesture is part of the Commission's social responsibility towards the fight against the spread of coronavirus. The state governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, appreciated the Commission and the federal government for the support.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission will be handing over the property at 135 Awolowo Road, Ikoyi, Lagos, to Lagos State Government for use as an isolation center for the COVID-19 patients. The property is a 3-bedroom of 6-flat apartments with a 6-room boys' quarters owned by a former Minister of Petroleum Resources, Diazani Alese Madueke, before it was forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria, following a Lagos High Court order in 2017. This gesture is part of the Commission's effort in discharging its own social responsibility towards the fight against the spread of coronavirus.
So what you're doing for us in Lagos, it's very reassuring that you are observant of what is going on, and in your own wisdom, you have felt how can you participate? What are the things that we can do? And part of the things that we've been having challenges with is isolation centers, right? And so this property that they have handed over to us, we will very quickly go around and see what level of improvement we need to put, because an isolation center is also like is a security zone, right? So all of the security apparatus has to be there, and it has to be conducive, because all our isolation centers, people come there, people get sick, they come in there and they get well and they go home.
Meanwhile, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission Sokoto Zonal Office today arraigned 2 Chinese nationals before the State High Court Sokoto on 2 counts of conspiracy and offering bribe to a public servant. Meng Wei Kun and Shui Kui were arraigned before Justice Mohammed Sifawa for allegedly offering to bribe the EFCC Sokoto Zonal head, Mr. Abdullahi Lawal, with a sum of 100 million naira on behalf of construction company China Zongyao Nigeria Limited. The company is being investigated over contracts awarded by the Zamfara state government in the sum of over 50 billion naira between 2012 to 2019. When the charges were read to them, the defendants pleaded not guilty, and the prosecution counsel Musa Gwani requested for a date to commence trial while asking the court for an accelerated hearing. The matter has been adjourned to May the 18th for the bail hearing and June the 15th for commencement of trial. MTN Nigeria Telecommunications PLC has held its 2020 annual general meeting in Lagos, southwest Nigeria. The meeting, which had in attendance just 5 of its 216 shareholders, while others joined virtually in compliance with the social gathering order, ended with a resolution to pay dividends at the rate of 4 naira 97 kobo for every 2 kobo ordinary share for shareholders whose name appear on the company register. 7 new directors and 3 others were also re-elected onto the board.
It restricts adherence to the social distancing and gathering order that MTN Nigeria Communications PLC holds its 2020 annual general meeting.
I'll start by expressing my thanks.
The chairman leads the meeting, which has the chief executive officer and the company secretary, along with 5 shareholders and 5 others who are committee members, while other directors and shareholders join in virtually.
The notice is hereby given.
The notice of the meeting is followed by the financial statement for 2019.
We have audited the consolidated and separate financial statement of MTN Nigeria Communication PLC.
After the preambles, the shareholders have the opportunity to express themselves and ask questions.
What mode of funding are you looking at going forward?
The first network to conduct trial for 5G technology in West Africa.
Questions have also been collated from shareholders who are not present. The Chief Executive Officer touches on as many of the questions as possible.
We're looking at investing in 4G technology. As was disclosed in the report, at this point in time, the population coverage on 4G is just above 40%, so we need to invest in the extension of this 4G rollout. In terms of the NCC fine, we have now concluded all aspects.
Then an e-voting process for the required resolutions, which is done by not just the required shareholders, but all 216 of them.
With 17 billion.
By the end of the meeting, 216 shareholders with almost 18 billion shares had voted on resolutions on the financial statement for 2019, dividends at the rate of 4.97 naira for every 2 kobo ordinary share, election of 7 new directors, re-election of 3 directors, as well as election of directors and shareholders into the Statutory Audit Committee.
We've also zero-rated some data for our customers.
The company says it continues to work with the Private Sector Coalition Against COVID-19, CACOVID, to provide necessities at this time, which include isolation centers, medical equipment, as well as palliative for Nigerians.
For some more business news, here's Kayode Okikiolu.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Joma, and you're welcome to Business News. Private creditors representing more than $9 trillion of assets under management have formed a group to negotiate debt relief for African nations on a case-by-case basis. The Africa Private Creditor Working Group will coordinate the views of more than 25 of the world's foremost asset managers and financial institutions, and also assist African countries and other debt providers to cushion the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the continent. They have also warned that a blanket approach to the process will pose a major risk for the continent as they seek to temporarily suspend $44 billion in debt payments this year. And a total of 606.196 billion naira has been shared between the federal, state and local governments for April 2020 by the Federal Account Allocation Committee. The figure, which is lower than the 780.926 billion naira shared in March, includes VAT, exchange gain, solid mineral revenue, excess bank charges and excess oil revenue. The federal government received 169.831 billion naira, the states received 86.14 billion naira, and local government councils got 66.411 billion naira, while the oil producing states received 32.895 billion naira. And now to the NSE, where today's trading session on the local stock exchange ended with no movement in the key benchmark indices, and that's despite a decline in market capitalization. Temple Ashaju gives us a summary of today's activity.
We're glad to have you join us on the Stock Market Report. Equities ended today's trading session with no movement in the key benchmark indices, but the week-to-date performance was negative by 0.72%, while the month-to-date returns remained positive at 3.69%. Now, the sell-down on the shares of Dangote Cement and MTN was the key drag for Friday's trading session. And on the sectoral front, the industrial goods was the worst hit as profits taken on O&O and Kevatin weighed down oil and gas stocks. Now, GT Bank traded most actively, boosting the total volume of transactions, which increased by 21%, and the value rose by 5.15%. Now, market sentiment was really positive at 1.5 times as Stanbic IBTC led 17 other stocks and CNI Leasing topped the laggers list of 13 losers. And that's your stock market report. I'm Temple Ashaju.
Thank you, Temple. On the global scene, stocks on Wall Street rose slightly despite early losses in a volatile Friday trading session. And that's after disappointing economic reports as well as escalating tensions between China and the US. Well, let's find out how other major markets ended the day. Well, thank you for watching Business News Tonight. I am Kayode Okikiolu. The news at 10 continues with Ijeoma.
Thanks a lot, Kayode. Still ahead on the news at 10, COVID-19 cases in the United States rise above 1.4 million. And that's according to Johns Hopkins University. We'll have this and more from our London studios and around the world in 5. Please stay with us. Welcome back. The Ogun State government has again extended the current lockdown by another 1 week, with a window of relaxation on Monday, Wednesday and Friday from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. to allow residents to restock essential needs and engage in commercial activities. The state governor, Dr. Abiodun, says it's imperative in the view of non-compliance with laid-down directives of a government aimed at flattening the curve. He asked for cooperation and understanding of residents, warning against any form of disobedience. U.S. President Donald Trump has vowed to deliver a coronavirus jab by the end of this year as he launched the White House vaccine initiative dubbed Operation Warp Speed. The effort will begin with studies on 14 promising vaccine candidates for accelerated research and approval. And this comes as the number of COVID-19 cases in the U.S. reaches over 1.4 million. Here's Simon Pusey with Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The number of COVID-19 cases in the United States has reached more than 1.4 million. That's according to Johns Hopkins University. The US is now the country with the most confirmed number of deaths and cases of COVID-19 in the world. In the past 2 months, more than 36.5 million Americans have applied for unemployment benefits, a record high in American history. In New York City, the mayor, Bill de Blasio, declared that 100 children have been diagnosed with a rare inflammatory syndrome, which might be a form of Kawasaki disease and could be a previously unnoticed symptom of COVID-19. The disease has caused 3 deaths in the state of New York so far. Official figures suggest that Germany's economy has shrunk by 2.2% in the first 3 months of this year, pushing the country into recession. It was the biggest quarterly fall since 2009, when the country was engulfed in the global financial crisis. The figures from the Federal Statistics Office come as Germany takes its first tentative steps to exit lockdown. Shops are reopening, pupils will gradually return to class, and football is restarting behind closed doors. In Brazil, the state of Sao Paulo is building thousands of vertical funeral plots for coronavirus victims as the country's pandemic death toll edges towards 14,000. Brazil is Latin America's ground zero for coronavirus infections, with over 200,000 confirmed cases. Sao Paulo is one of the worst affected states of Brazil. Its governor has cautioned against a rush to lifting the lockdown in the state, despite criticism from President Jair Bolsonaro that quarantine is heavily affecting the economy. Bolsonaro's popularity has plummeted since the outbreak began in Brazil. According to recent polls, 43% of Brazilians thought he was doing a bad job in dealing with the pandemic. As in Brazil, the impact of the pandemic is starting to hit several other South American countries hard. In Peru, hospitals in the Amazon region are struggling under the weight of the coronavirus pandemic, with some doctors saying the hospital system has collapsed. At the same time, in the Amazon region, local indigenous communities are pleading the government for help, saying there is no more food and children have resorted to stripping local plants for basic sustenance. In Venezuela, the pandemic and the consequential lockdown measures are hitting a population already suffering from 6 years of hyperinflation. Since the beginning of the restrictive quarantine measures in the country, finding food has become increasingly difficult, pushing more and more people in the countryside to rely on alternative sources of sustenance, such as cow blood. While in Chile, in the capital Santiago, Venezuelan migrants have been forced out into the streets, unable to work amid lockdown and unable to return home due to the region's closed borders. The United Nations estimates that almost 4 million Venezuelans have left the country in recent years. A typhoon in the Philippines has hit the northern island of Luzon, bringing heavy winds and rains, sending thousands of people fleeing to temporary shelters. Typhoon Vongfong is the first named storm to hit the West Pacific. In the town of Buhi, hundreds of people have taken shelter inside schools while practicing social distancing amid the coronavirus pandemic. Provincial and city governments estimated that around 200,000 people have been evacuated so far. And finally, while a growing number of African countries have made the use of face masks compulsory to curb the spread of coronavirus, fashion lovers in the biggest cities are combining style and safety by donning colourful and artistic masks. In Senegal and South Africa, the number of fashion stylists embracing this new trend has been booming in recent weeks. And the trend is proving to be a big gain to local tailors who are physically making the masks.
In the beginning of the pandemic, I thought that this was going to last just maybe a few months. now I do believe that in the next 2 years, maybe, we're going to have to adapt and live with this virus. And, I think as a fashion designer, we're going to have to integrate with each outfit fashion masks, basically.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Time now for some sports news. The Association of Tennis Professionals, ATP, has announced that the suspension of the ATP Tour owing to the COVID-19 pandemic has been extended until July the 31st. This means ATP events in cities such as Hamburg, Newport and Atlanta will not take place as scheduled. And that's sports news.
Thanks a lot, Ayotunde. Finally, it may be another case of graft as lawmakers in the Oyo State House of Assembly are investigating the 4.3 billion naira discovered in a secret account in the state. The chairman of the House Committee on Information, Olugbenga Omole, told Channels Television that the account has been in existence for over 10 years. Mr. Omole explains the account is domiciled in a New Generation Bank in the state, but that the investigation is ongoing to discover when the fund was lodged, who lodged it, and who ordered the lodgement. He noted that the fund was discovered by the Auditor General during an oversight function of the legislature. And the main news again. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 today said 5 states in Nigeria are currently participating in ongoing World Health Organization solidarity trial for COVID-19 vaccine. The PTF also disclosed that over 50% of infections are from 9 densely populated local government areas, but did not name the local government areas. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. You have a great weekend, but stay safe while you do it. Good night.